Okay, so today we are going to start 8.2, and we're going to learn to graph quadratic equations that have a c to it. So what this c means, if it is greater than 0, which means what kind of number is greater than 0? Positive. If it is positive, your parent function, which is which color? The blue, is going to move up. If c is less than 0, which means it's negative, your parent function, which is the blue one, is going to move down. Okay, two key things that you need to know. Your vertex is always going to be 0C. That has to be in this format. If it's not in this format, it's not always going to be C. We'll talk about that later. Also, your axis of symmetry is always going to be x equals 0. Because we're only moving it up and down, we're not moving it left and right. Okay, so we're going to graph this and we're going to compare it to the parent function. So before we even graph it, before we do a t-chart or anything, we're just going to look at it from left to right. So as I read this equation, this function, are there any changes here to my parent function? No. So that means there's no reflection, there's no stretch, there's no shrink. Okay, you guys getting that? Okay, for this one. But there is something here. Right, it's -2. So this means when you're going to write down the change, it is a vertical translation two units in which direction? 2 units?
Up. Down.
-2 means 2 units down. Okay, so we're going to graph this now. So, x and y. All right. You should know what the parent function looks like. We'll graph it in a second. If I pick, always start with the vertex or the axis of symmetry, and it's going to be 0. So if I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0, minus 2 is -2. So 0, -2, 1, 2. Because remember, it's going to shift down. It shifts down. So if I pick 1, 1 squared is 1, 1 minus 2 is -1. So 1 and -1. Okay, let's say I pick -1. -1 times -1 is 1. 1 minus 2 is -1 again. Okay, let's pick 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Minus 2 is 2. So I bet you if I plug in -2, what's the answer going to be? 2. So 2 and 2, let's just say, and then 2 and 2. So as best as I can, I'm going to draw my parabola. Now, if you had graphed the parent function looks something like this. So the only thing that changed here was that it moved down 2. It translated 2. Okay, so now let's get into a function that's a little bit more complicated, but not so bad, because everything has to be compared to the parent function. Okay, so we look at the new function, the baby function if you want to call it. Going from left to right, what's the first change you see? The 4. And from yesterday's homework, if you did that and paid attention in class, the 4 is saying what? It is a, what's happening? Is it a stretch or a shrink?
Stretch.
It is a stretch by what factor? It's a stretch by a factor of 4. Okay, It's actually a vertical stretch by a factor of 4. Is there a negative?
No.
No, so it's not a reflection. Left to right, the next thing I see is this part. What is this part telling you? It is a vertical translation 1 unit up. Good. Okay, so let's graph this, and I'm going to do this on Desmos so that I can record it also. So instead of using my Wabbit, we'll record it here. Okay, first mama function is what? Y equals? Good. So y equals x squared. The good thing about Desmos is that you could do it in color. It changes it by color. Okay, everybody see the red mama function? Okay, so you guys said, and I'll hide it in a second, y equals, I'm going to hide it. Oh, I can't yet. Y equals, what was it, 4x? Right. 4, I'm going to hide it for a second so you don't see it. 4x squared, good. And this one is? Plus 1. Okay, so this is what you said. You said that it was going to be a vertical stretch. So here's my mama function, and I'm standing with my arms up like a football goal post. And a vertical stretch looks like this, as if I'm stretching up to the sky. So look at the parabola. What's happening to the parabola? It's getting skinnier, right? Okay. Now, so now not only is it getting skinnier, but it's also moving 1 unit up. So here's my parent function. It's a stretch of 4, and then I'm going to go up 1. That's what it's going to look like. So here it is. Did it stretch and get skinnier?
Yes.
Did it move 1 unit up?
Yes.
Perfect. The last part of this, we're going to translate functions not from the mama function, not from the parent function. We're going to translate it from a different function. So instead of comparing it to x squared, which is the parent function, we're going to compare it to this function right here. Sorry, f of x. So my new function that I'm going to make is whatever f of x is, whatever that is, and then what am I going to do to that graph? I'm going to, where is it going to move? What is that saying? It's going to be moved down by 7. That's what's happening. So it says to describe the transformation from here to here. So how do I know it's moving down by 7? Because these are my directions right here. So here's what you're going to write. Describe the transformation. It is a vertical translation 7 units down. All right. That to me I think is the part that's easiest to understand. Here's the harder part. You have to now write a new equation. Okay. So, g of x. Okay, pay attention here. It's so much easier than what it sounds like. G of x is really f of x minus 7. Well, what's f of x? What's f of x, guys? Yeah, it's this right here, right? That's f of x. So I'm just going to rewrite it. Negative 0.5 x squared plus 2. And then what am I going to do with that f of x? I'm going to subtract 7. Now I'm going to clean it up. Here's cleaning it up. Negative 0.5 x squared. What's 2 minus 7? Negative 5. There is my new function.
That's it.
Yep.